Charlie.
Mark, 1 Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
We're still seeing it quite well through that haze.
T-minus 37 seconds.
The fight is growing confident.
E equals MC.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Tear down this wall.
Something's happening coming up on staging.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your hosts, Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. This is Ryan Treasure. I'm filling in for Jeff today. He's out there taking over the world. As you know, he's the CEO and president of World Talk Radio, home to the VoiceAmerica.com internet talk radio family. And welcome everybody to the show. We have a fantastic special show for all of you today. We're going to kind of continue down this line of speaking to some fantastic female thought leaders across the space. And I know a couple of weeks ago, we did an interview. We talked about work-life balance for, moms and dads and being able to, kind of hone in that time where you can still be a productive executive, but also still make time for that soccer game on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening and all that good stuff. So we're going to continue that today, talking a little bit about some other stuff as it relates to children with our fantastic guest we have today. For more than 20 years, Reena Patel has had the privilege of working with families and children, supporting all aspects of education and positive wellness. Patel has worked extensively with developing children as well as children with exceptional needs, supporting their academic, behavioral, and social development. Thank you so much for joining us, Reena. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time out to sit down with us and have a little conversation. And, as we were kind of doing a little chat right before the interview, we were kind of talking about, what Finding a Frequency is and what the show is all about. And, so I kind of want to just, start from the beginning. Let's go back to where it all started for you. And let's talk about what did that road look like for you as you, moved into working with kids and helping out kids that, have social development and helping them out, the ones that have exceptional needs. Tell us how that all started.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm going to take this back even further, just even with myself. And here I am so many years later with multiple degrees and highly professional. But going back all the way when I was a young girl in elementary school, I struggled. I was just a different learner. And this was in the early 80s. And it was just a different educational environment. So moving along through my college path, once I figured out and had the supports in place, I was pretty much was able to find what worked for me as a learner. And along that path, I met a lot of unique individuals and had developed a niche over at UCLA at the Neuropsychiatric Hospital. They have what's called an early partial day program, and I just took a summer internship while I was doing my graduate school work at Loyola Marymount, and I fell in love with individuals with special needs, specifically autism. I worked there for a few years and decided that I wanted to specialize and work exclusively with children who had challenges in learning, who whether it was a learning disability or had cultural differences in terms of coming to the States. I really wanted to figure out a way that they would learn and progress best. And that also included their social and emotional wellness.
Oh, wow. So you've really been, kind of since the onset of your career, just really honing in on helping out some of the special needs children and, kind of figuring out what they need. I gotta give you, massive amounts of kudos for the amount of patience I know that working with some children with special needs has. I mean, I have a 5-year-old who doesn't have special needs, and I barely muster the patience to deal with that from time to time. So, man, much kudos to you.
Oh, I appreciate that. And one thing, I'm a behavior analyst and I specialize in behavior. And one of the things that is quite fascinating is whether it really doesn't matter what your challenges are. And I tell parents this all the time. A child with special needs, a child who doesn't have special needs, we all exhibit some form of challenging behavior, whether it is not complying to our parents telling us to do something or having a hard time completing our homework.
That first one right there is my life every day of the week. Marley, can you please sit down and do your homework? You got homework to do. But I want to do this. No, we got to do homework first. And we got to go through that every single day.
Yeah.
So as you kind of look back at your career and you're moving through, where did your company come from? Like what made you decide that you wanted to found your own company, which is called Autism, right? AUTIZM.
Yeah, Autism and More is a subset of my own private practice because I'm an educational psychologist and a counselor and also an author. And what I did
should I be sitting on a couch right now while I talk to you?
No, that's all right. But just working, I worked over 12 years in a school district, and I wanted to branch out. I just was thinking outside the box, and I had already developed programs for schools, understood education, worked with a lot of principals and teachers, but really wanted to go private and work with more families. And again, looking beyond special needs, the special needs population, because anything that I was doing in terms of supports and interventions could really benefit all of us. And it really is a global approach. And that's why I'm a big believer in what's called positive parenting and working with families. And so I opened up my own practice and working and consulting with larger districts and working with organizations, and also working directly with families, making sure we find out what's meaningful for them and looking at the whole child, not just their education, but their social and emotional well-being, and making sure that they're just a cohesive group, that they're kindness and compassion is really my theme.
Yeah,
and so
let's talk about that a little bit, because I think you said you were like in school in the early 80s is what you said. Yeah. So I think you and I are probably right around the same age, right? I went to school. My early childhood was in the early 80s as well. Yeah. Graduated high school in the 90s, and there's been a shift, really in the way that I think people are involved, with their kids. I when I was growing up, I was no stranger to catching a paddle. I went to a private school, right? And back when I went to private school, the principal of the private school could paddle you,
Right. That was a form of discipline. Right.
And I was a very strong-willed child. And so I found myself getting paddled, I would say at least once a week.
Right.
At the private
that's
school.
Unfortunate.
Hey, you know what? I hold no ill will. I have no, emotional scarring or anything like that that I know of because of any of that. But there's a shift, and when you talk about positive parenting, obviously swatting your kid with a paddle is obviously not positive parenting. Right. But seeing that shift, I think a lot of people, maybe don't know where to start. Maybe they don't quite understand what true positive reinforcement is because can you kind of maybe break that down for the parents that might be listening?
Well, that's an excellent question. And it's a question that I get often. And, using a paddle or even putting a child in timeout, those are all considered punishment procedures. And it's a big P word. And oftentimes people don't like to talk about it. But punishment really is not effective. Research supports this. It's not effective over time. Yes, for that split moment, a child or an individual will stop doing what they were doing or they shouldn't have been doing, but it's not effective in the long run. And so positive reinforcement is pretty much isolating the specific behaviors, the things that, almost like I always say, catch them making good choices and making sure that individual, that child knows that is exactly the behavior you wanted to see, cleaning up their toys, for example, and praising them for it, because the likelihood that they're going to do it again, they like that feeling. They want to please, that they'll do it again. And so that's just effective. It's more effective over time. Now, do we punish our kids? Of course we do. But I always say, sometimes you do have to take things away, or sometimes they do have to sit in a take a break situation, what I call a timeout.
Oh, yeah.
But always pair it with something that they can work towards and earn and shape it.
So an example of that might be something like, the child isn't listening or complying to something that, the child's being asked to do. And it might be, to be positive without, having any harsh punishments. It might be, well, if you're not going to listen to me, then like I do this with our daughter. She gets, like a certain amount of free play time, right? And so then I'll just say, hey, if you're not going to listen, then I'm not going to allow you to have free play time, or I'm going to take 10 minutes off of your free play time, or, that type of thing. So we're not sitting in a corner. No one's getting a spanking or, anything like that. Is that a good example?
Well, I mean, those are still considered punishment techniques. What I would recommend doing if you're sitting in a situation like that and a child, I like to use the word let's versus just you. And so I would just shift it and say, let's sit down and finish. Maybe you break it down a little bit. Maybe it's too much of a task that we've asked to do. For example, having their dinner. Let's have 5 more bites, and then I will sit with you and read for a few minutes. And so really just focusing and shifting on not using takeaway, not saying you're going to have to be reprimanded, and focus on the task, what it is that you want them to do, and then put some type of motivation or reinforcer, pair it with something like that, is highly effective.
Good stuff. I hope you guys are all listening and taking notes. I sure am. Yeah. I guess this is kind of a good segue as we, kind of talk about positive parenting and all of that. And, we were talking, a little bit about how things have kind of shifted over time from, this corporal type of punishment with kids like when I grew up, versus how I'm trying to raise my daughter. I do, no one's perfect. You're always making, adjustments to your parenting style. And my wife and I were having this conversation yesterday. She works here at Voice America as well. And we were having a conversation with some of our younger millennial cohorts that run radio shows. And, one of the things that came up is, we were just kind of like, wow, things are just so much different now, the way that, everybody is, and, always trying to do the best thing. And I told my wife, I'm like, I got to be honest, being a parent is literally the hardest thing I have ever done in my life.
It is. There's no manual there. There's no right or wrong way. I always tell parents, your children the best. And so you just want to guide with, compassion, like I said, compassion and kindness, be very nurturing, but you do the best that you can, and hope that our kids, when they're older, they look back at us and say, Mom and Dad, you did the best that you could. And, and I love you for that, because it's okay to make mistakes. I do it every day. Yep. I drove my son to school the other day and pulled him out of the car and realized I didn't have his shoes. And so I'm like, oh, great. So we make mistakes, and it's important for our kids to see our mistakes, because there's a lot of pressure already for them. We're in a world full of anxiety-provoking situations, and letting our children know that we're doing the best that we can with just love and intention, that it's important for them to see that.
Yeah, so I was reading in some of the information that you had. Do you guys do like parenting workshops for new parents in your area to kind of teach some of this stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. What's great about my practice is I'm virtual, and I have clients who are international as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I do individual workshops. I do larger workshops, and I tailor it. Like, as I was saying before, every parent, every family dynamic is so different. We have similar challenges, but it's important for me to know what your goals are as a whole unit, and customize my services based on that. So I not only see clients within my city, but I do have a large population of families and children that I work with virtually.
Oh, that's really cool. You'll have to send me information on that. I'm always trying to learn and soak up knowledge and be the best parent that I could be. So I'd love to check out some of your classes. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
All right, let's shift gears here just a little bit, right? I know earlier we were talking about some screen time, and you just wrote an article about some screen time. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's just, I don't want to call it an epidemic, but it is pretty much, it takes, think about us. The minute, I'm talking to you, and I've got, about 3 or 4 devices in front of me. So I've screens are a big challenge, and it's really trying to find that balance. And there's research out there, and I was, the American Academy of Pediatrics, in 2016, they changed this to about 18 months and under. It's important not to have any devices or screens in front of your child. Prior to that, it was 2 years of age, and I still stick with the 2 years of age. And the reason being is their cognitive skills are still developing. Their sensorial skills, their ability to touch tactile toys and feel things that kind of cause an effect. Like if I push something, what's going to happen? And when they're in front of the screen, it's just passive learning. And so it's a huge difference from where we were even 20, 25, 30 years ago. And
you and I didn't have any screens.
Yeah, we didn't. And if it was the television, it was just that, and it was probably in one room, right? And so it's everywhere. It's very accessible. What they're finding,
I had to turn mine with a dial.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the
dial and the antennas?
Yeah, you remember that? Click, 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 click,
Yeah.
and then yeah. It was like hard to watch TV. So I'm like, I'll go outside and ride my bike. This is silly.
I know, trying to manipulate the antenna on the top of the television. No, it's so much more accessible. It's portable. What's interesting, Ryan, is also, I don't know if you've noticed, is when you go to the movies, the previews are so much quicker now because individuals' attention spans are just less. And they've done MRI scans and have seen, they did a study actually with, I don't know what off the top of my head the quote, but in terms of where the source is, and I can get that information. But they did a study where they looked at MRIs of adolescents, and their brain just looked different. They're just neurons and pathways were so different versus individuals who watched had less than 7 hours a day of screen time. So
7 hours?
It's the National Institute of Health.
I'm like 7 hours of screen time. That's a lot.
Well, if you actually look at your phone now, this is an interesting thing because people think that that's a lot. If you actually, when I work with teens and even parents, I'll have them look at their devices and look at their screen time hours. You could easily hit about 5 hours a day.
All right, so let's do a in real time. Let's break down Ryan Treasure and Angie Treasure's household screen time with Marley Treasure, which is our daughter. Right, so we get up in the morning. This is the routine. Let's see if we were even coming close. Right,
Okay.
Not my screen time because that's off the charts. I'm in front of a computer 10 hours a day. I'm looking at a screen. That's all I do. I edit on a screen.
Right.
So let's see for Marley. Let's just kind of let's real time, right? So we get up in the morning. Before we go eat breakfast, we all like to watch the news together because we like to watch the weather, right? So the three of us will watch the news together. That's about 15 minutes, right, for the news segment.
Okay.
Right. And then the TV's off. We're done with screen for that time. And then we're off to the kitchen. We have breakfast. And then at that point, then we're, getting ready for school. She's in kindergarten. And then we go to school. So that's the only screen time in the morning would be that 15 minutes.
Right. Is anyone
TV.
checking their phone or checking their emails? Or
I am always looking at my phone. So does that matter too? Like if they see you on your screen?
Yes.
Got it.
So it's very important for us to model the behaviors we expect from our kids. And so we are not giving them undivided attention. And then you're going to see increase in behaviors because they're trying to gain our attention. But being in front of that having your phone, oftentimes we'll wake up, and I have a habit of this as well, is my phone is right next to me. And that's the first thing that I do is check my emails.
Yeah, my phone's my alarm clock.
Yes, and my phone is my alarm clock. And so the first thing I always say is put your phone in the bathroom. Don't make it so accessible. With my daughter who's in high school, she's 15, her phone needs to be out in the hallway. It's just, you don't need it. It needs to be harder to get to. But yeah, that is considered screen time, looking at your iPads, looking at your iPhones or your smartphone.
So what is for a young kid like 5, 6, 7 years old? What is an appropriate amount of screen time? Do you guys have you guys kind of honed that in?
Yes, there's actual research on this, but 2 to 5 year olds, you have to do no more than an hour a day. And they want parents, to watch and really foster that understanding, because again, they don't all necessarily understand what they're watching. And so you need to have that dialogue. You need to have that discussion. Kids who are between the ages of 8 and 11, they had a study out, and they were up to 11 hours
Wow.
per day. And so people are really shocked by these numbers and findings.
Yeah, my daughter has a tablet, but the only thing she's allowed to do on the tablet, she can only do two things on the tablet. Number one is she can play chess, right? Digital chess. And the second thing she can do is ABC Mouse. And there's no movies, no cartoons, none of that. It's just those two things. Do you think that in a case like that, as a parent like myself, am I being too strict when I do allow her screen time by limiting what she's allowed to do? Or is it a good thing to keep her focused on an educational activity? Or should I allow her the opportunity to watch 30 minutes of, Shimmer and Shine cartoon?
Well, I mean, Ryan, those are great questions. And that's what some of these more longitudinal long-term studies are really looking at. But the reality is a lot of educational tools are so much more accessible for us as educators and as parents. So I personally think that it's okay to have, within the time frame that, like I said, within an hour, for considering all of that, if they are going to be using screens, why not have it be something that they can gain information?
Right. That was my thought.
Yeah. But again, you monitor it, right? You have the conversation. If they're doing something, ABC Mouse or Khan Academy or playing a chess game, it's important to still have the dialogue. Nothing's going to beat face-to-face conversation, right? So we want to check in. We want to check for understanding. What is it that they really took away from this? And it's most schools. A lot of schools now are their books, which is a good thing, are on their iPads.
Yeah,
and
my daughter's school is like that too. So then you have that screen time too.
Yes, yeah. And so it's just important to find the right balance. I like that it's there, but I just don't want it to take up, a huge percentage of their day where they're missing those social cues and they're not developing those relationships with their peers, and they're not going outside and just moving about and having that physical activity.
Yeah, no, that's a really important feature. We did an interview with he's a professor at Missouri University, Mizzou, I believe, something like that. It was a couple weeks ago, but he's the academic doctorate there, and he was saying the same thing. It's really important that yes, you want your kids to be smart and you want them to take good classes and educate and learn to read and write and all those types of things. But he said that if you're spending 6, 7, 8 hours a day on education, you also have to make sure that you're spending, 60 minutes at least at a minimum a day with the kids out doing something physical, because they've got to, not just, advance their mind, but they've also got to advance their physical abilities as well.
Oh, absolutely. Leisure skills. That's what it is. Developing family leisure skills. And you can even, one of the recommendations I tell families too is when you create your family rules for the house, when you create what you're going to do, put on there the activities, the physical activities that you're going to do as a whole family. So whether it is going out and shooting hoops, whether it is riding bikes, make sure you put it on there, because it just holds everybody accountable.
So I'm going to give, I want your opinion on, our family has 5 rules at our house, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I ask my daughter all the time, what is rule? Okay, let's say I absolutely hate whining. It drives me nuts. Right. When little girls are very emotional. Right. So our number 1 rule is no whining. Right. No whining, no crying, no temper tantrums. That's the first 3 rules. Listen and learn everything. Those are our 5 rules that we go by every day. And so whenever she gets to a point where she's not listening, it's, hey, do you remember what rule number 4 is? Yes, it's listening. Well, you're not doing that right now. Is that an effective strategy?
It is. Setting the more clear you are with your limits and what you're expecting to see, it's just better. And I'm coming from a positive perspective. So instead of saying no, I would probably put on your rule what it is that you want to see. So instead of no whining, I would probably say use your words. So I just kind of shifted a little bit, so then I can reinforce them when I do see the behavior.
And that's why you're the behavioral specialist and I'm the radio guy.
But it's fabulous, because those are the areas that that we do want to see, to not see in terms of the negative behaviors. But yes, I recommend kind of shifting those words. And I love how you're connecting them back with your family rules. And just, rules should be very clear. And they should also know what the consequences are if they don't follow the family rules. So what would happen? Do they get a warning? Does nothing happen at all? Or do they have something?
No, yeah, we definitely, I know we were talking about punishment alternatives, but we, for lack of a better term, I guess we'd have punishments for those things. So if we've, had an instance where, we're not listening, and we've had a conversation about it, and we're, now I've asked maybe 4 times or so to not listen. Then we start getting into the, hey, if you're not going to listen to what I'm going to say, then you're not going to be able to do whatever it is, some activity that she likes. I've taken toys away. Like, she has a toy box, right? And it's in her room, and I have no problem saying, hey, if you're not going to listen to me, then I'm not going to, then you can't go in your toy box after dinner. We're going to go straight to bed. We're not going to do that.
No, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, at the end of the day, we pick and choose our battles, and I think
my wife tells me that all the time. God bless her.
Yeah. and what I'm also hearing from you is you sound pretty firm. You're very consistent, which is great. I mean, you don't want to have too much emotional up and down reactions when you're responding to your child who also might be having a meltdown as well. You're just being very calm. Use those phrases and reminders. And I think what you're doing is great. Yeah,
meltdowns, those were really a big issue like 3 and 4 years old. Not quite so much of an issue now. However, I have noticed a lot too that, she's becoming extremely independent. It's like, hey, let's go put our shoes on. No, Dad, I could do this. Or no, I'll do this myself. I want to put a ponytail in my hair, and I'm like, all right, well, come over here. I'll help you put no, I'm going to do it myself. And I'm like, okay, right. And so it's funny because like she does these things herself, and then you're like, you're proud of her because she did it herself, but then her ponytail's like off the side of her head, and I'm like, hey, great job, that looks fantastic. Even though in my head I'm like, wow, that's a sideways ponytail.
That, or it takes you a little bit longer to get from where you needed to be because they wanted to do it themselves.
So I've started to notice you have to have a pad of about 15 minutes to transition from one thing to the other. So that way you don't end up with a meltdown scenario. Cause I've noticed that for me, especially, or our daughter, it's really hard to get her to go from, activity A to activity B, and then of course, the biggest challenge that I have as a father and we have as parents at our house is just like when it's time to sit down and let's do something like homework, she's just her focus on these tasks are not quite there yet. So that's a challenge for us. But we've been working on, maybe this is silly, I don't know, but we got to come home and do homework. So we're practicing focusing. We're practicing on doing homework. We may not even have homework to do, but we're doing homework anyways because we're practicing how to do homework.
Yeah, you're getting ready to learn. Those are great work ethics. I love that, of course. I mean, please do that at an early age. I mean, what our kids need to know by kindergarten is up there. I was going to just say one thing about choices. Providing your children with choices oftentimes helps to not have those meltdowns. And so making, choices that both you and your wife can live with, do you want number 1? Do you want number 2? Do you want to wear this or do you want to wear that? That really does put them in control. So they do feel like they're in charge and they have that autonomy.
We try that too. And then this is what happens. All right, you have choice number 1 or choice number 2. And she goes, I don't like either one of them. I want choice number 3.
So that's the thing is you have to kind of have to assess, right, and figure out what it is that they're going to most likely buy into.
Yeah, and then we go, no, that wasn't one of the choices. You can't be making stuff up. That's not how it works, sweetie.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow, it's just so good to talk to you. I love just kind of talking about, kids and, things that we can all do as parents to do better. Let's talk about the other part of a part of what you do, helping the, kids with autism and, the special needs kids. We have a health and wellness channel here on Voice America that we have some stuff that we do with the autism community. Autism Spectrum is the name of the radio show. So we're, advocates of spreading the message and helping people to gain knowledge, leveraging our media platform on those topics. One of our executive producers, who's been with us for, I don't know, 18 or 19 years here, a little bit longer than I've been here, almost as long as the company has been available. One of her daughter has autism and all that. So it's definitely something that's near and dear to us. Let's talk about that side. I know you wrote a couple of books around those topics. What drove you to do that?
So I am, I've been working since '97 in the field of autism, and like I said, it was started at UCLA's neuropsych hospital, and it's a developmental disorder. You tend to see it usually around 2 or 3 of age. I mean, nowadays we can spot it as early as 18 months, even earlier sometimes. But language is a huge speed, their ability to speak. Some of their motor skills are delayed, definitely their social ability. And you see certain unique behaviors that present along those lines as well. And it's just been something I've been very close to. Like I said, the children that I started to work with, you just don't see anything physically going on, right?
Right.
Sometimes when you're pregnant and you have and genetic disorders or Down syndrome, those are all challenging diagnoses as well. But the difficulty that I've worked when I work with families is that they just don't know until a few years into their child's life that they've got a child who presents with ASD. And so that is just the grieving process that our families go with is so hard. And so we're working with that. And then you also are wanting to make sure the importance of intervening very early, providing the supports and resources as early as possible is so important. I mean, it shows, you can see huge differences in children as they're older, the fact that they've, the families that have intervened early. And so I wrote a book. It was really important to me to make sure, I'm a big proponent of inclusive societies, just being inclusive, no matter what your differences are. And
it takes a village.
It does. It takes a village. Sadly, there's a large percentage of parents who end up in divorce when you do have a child with special needs. And so it really does take a village. It takes the school system. It takes the community. I mean, there are great support groups out there. But working in the field myself, I felt limited on books that really looked at a different perspective, taught our children who didn't have a disability, our typical developing kids, how to interact with someone who had autism. And so that's where my friend Max came about. I wanted to create a story, write a book that really took not the child with autism's perspective, but the perspective of a typical developing kiddo who had a child with, a friend with autism in their class. And that was Max. And so the story is really so sweet. It's about kindness and being inclusive and really helping one another out. And it really is a sweet story that I recommend. It's available on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble.
Now, are these kids books that like kids can read, or are they kids for adults?
Yes, they're targeted for age 3 to 10-year-olds.
I'm going to run out of money because I've been interviewing all of these authors. I interviewed a woman yesterday, and she wrote a book. She has a rescue cat, right? And one of the things that she did with her rescue cat is she started to develop a story around the rescue cat and some of the challenges that she had with the rescue cat and the challenges that the cat had physically, and then turning those into positive stories. Like, I'll give you an example. The cat was born with like a weird, funky eye. And so she wrote a book basically, and it's like the story of the cat and how it has to get along with other cats, and the other cats think it's weird because it has this, so the moral of the story ends up being that, kind of similar to like maybe an ugly duckling kind of story, but looking, and so it's all pictorial. So it's actual pictures of her cat, right? And all these things. And so I thought it was amazing. So yeah, I'm going to go broke because every time I hear about these books, I'm like, I got to go buy that book and I got to go buy that book. And so now I got to go buy these books, especially this one that you have here, because I know you have another one that's called Winnie and Her Worries, right?
And this is important. So all my book, what's different about my books and being an author, right? It didn't start out my career as an author. It just kind of came to me after, is every book ends with actual tips and tools for educators and parents. And so these are great storybooks for children to understand and read themselves, for teachers to read in their classroom, but for parents to have. But every book that I have, My Friend Max and Winnie and Her Worries, has actual tools and techniques at the end. And so when we think about what our society, where we are, in 2019, the level of stress and anxiety every child has is it's crazy. Like I said, I've got a teenager, I've got a 12-year-old, I've got a little 5-year-old, and the stress that they create for themselves in terms of school, peers, the expectations that they even just give to them, put on themselves is so high that I wanted to have a book that really taught coping skills at an early age, because working with teenagers now, and working with them in a therapy setting, we tend to use what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's very effective. But in my head, I was thinking, why aren't we doing some of these tools and techniques with everybody? Because
you're 100%, and I know I do this with every one of my interviews. I have no other experience to talk about other than my own, right? So I live my life, my daughter, and I deal with this every single day. This is probably one of the most challenging things we deal with at home is, you do get those anxious moments, and anxiety is something that runs in our family and my wife's side of the family. So it's something that we are extremely conscious of, and trying to really work hard to not put the so much pressure into our family life that it does cause those anxious moments. Because I've seen my daughter get frustrated on just the simplest things, and then all of a sudden she's so anxious about it, she's telling herself, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to do this," or I'm never going to be able to read, or I'm just the worst student ever, which she said yesterday while we were doing homework, which I'm like, oh my goodness, this breaks my heart. So we're getting Winnie and her worries. We're going to go get that today.
It really explains what worries are. It's really it takes it back so concrete for them. It's got a great image of also these kind of physical feelings that you get when you are worried or anxious. It really identifies that. And like I said, a great story, and it gives tools. I don't want to give too much away because I want you to read the book, but some great tools. One of them is called a worry box. And a worry box pretty much is when you've got worries throughout your day, you don't want it to overcome you, right? And so writing them out or drawing a picture of that worry and putting it in that worry box, and finding a time of day that mom and dad, and for example, your daughter can just read through those worries or look at those pictures and discuss it is so good to compartmentalize it and separate it.
That goes perfectly with the conversation my daughter and I had with each other on Sunday. We were over at my mom's house, her grandmother's house, and she kept getting stuck on things and not letting it go and not moving on. And I had to stop and literally sit down on the floor, right? So I'm sitting at her level, right? And we had to have this dad and daughter conversation that was, hey, you know what? It's okay for you to be upset about something. It's okay for you to be worried about this. It's okay. But you also have to remember that you can't let that completely consume you. You have to be able to let it go and move on. And so we had that conversation, and I was very, very proud of her because she understood the conversation, number one, and then moved on. But I think a lot of times parents don't take the time to, just have a conversation. I think they would be amazed at, even a 4 and 5-year-old's ability to have an actual, conversation on topics that are, really deep and heartfelt and important components of stuff that we all need to learn at young ages,
Oh, absolutely. And just validate what you did right there was validating the fact that she was upset and worried, and moving forward is really important. And I use the word moving forward versus moving on, and because it just kind of gives them a little bit more of a visualization, but trying to kind of go down that road, but doesn't mean we're forgetting what it is that was bothering them. And we will get back to it.
Yeah, we just can't let it consume us. It's okay that it's there.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely you will, any parent will benefit from Winnie and Her Worries. It's just a great, and I made the books a little bit bigger because in my head, I thought about your daughter, you said is in kindergarten, thought about reading it in a circle time or group setting, and to be able to have and show the kiddos and have pictures. And that's the reason the books are a little bit larger.
No, that's perfect though. I volunteer too from time to time. I'll try to go down to the school. All the kids think, when I go to the school, they're like, oh, your dad is a radio guy. That's super cool. And so I like to do, I can't remember what they call it, junior achievement. So I'll go and talk about, the stuff that we do here at the radio station, what it means to be a media, what it means to do media the right way, and what it means to do an interview with somebody. And so we've done like little mock interviews with the 5-year-olds in kindergarten class and had a bunch of fun. But yeah, this was cool because I think this would be one of these books I could probably bring to the school and do, because we do the group reading thing. And my daughter is in an accelerated school for her age, and so they're already doing like second grade reading stuff. So she can read fairly well for a 5-year-old and does really well. So I think that would be a great story to introduce and have it help them.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Exactly. Teachers, my goal really writing these books, remember, I come from an educational setting. I'm an educational psychologist, is to have these books in classrooms. And when I tell, I talk to anyone, if you buy one to donate to your school, because teachers and educators will be so appreciative, because they need tools, they need resources to have these dialogues. And going back to my friend Max, the prevalence is so different. When I started in the 90s, it was 1 in 600. And so the chances of your child having an individual with autism, a student in your class, is so high that having a book like My Friend Max is just a great dialogue conversation starter.
Yeah, I had a question on autism. One of the things I had always wondered is, because I've never really met an adult with autism. I've met a couple of kids with autism, so I understand it from that from that spectrum. And I know every kid that has autism, they're not the same. Everything about them, each one is unique and different and that. But what is it like for someone with autism to be an adult?
Imagine, one, it depends where you fall on that spectrum. So some individuals who are a little bit more what they say higher functioning can actually retain jobs. And,
I read an article. There was a person with autism that just passed the bar exam in Florida.
Yes, I read that too.
Yeah.
I thought that was fabulous. They're bright individuals. Some of them are very, very high, possess high intelligence skills and routines are so important to them. One of the things I do early on with families is teaching kids flexibility, because they do present with rigid behaviors and routines. They themselves have anxiety, but as adults, a few years ago, I was up in Los Angeles and I had gone to a residential, it was an institution, and I was working with 50 and 60-year-olds with autism. And so it doesn't go away. It's with them. It's just really teaching them how to compensate and cope with what they have. But some of them live in group homes. Some of them still live with their families. Some live with other individuals who have special needs. But imagine what parents go through thinking about your child as they get older and go into stages, is what are they going to do without me, and having those making those life choices and decisions. And as early as 3 years old, I'm having those talks with parents about, their future.
Oh, that's amazing. So you know what I want to do? Let's pause right here for just a second. We're going to take a quick commercial break, okay? We'll take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to wrap up the interview and just kind of have a conversation with you about Woman of the Year, right? I heard you've been nominated for that. So let's take a quick commercial break. Guys, go check us out all over social media, at Radio Ryan 1, at Jeff Spinney 2. Check out the Finding a Frequency website, findingafrequency.net. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Do you understand your feline friends as well as you'd like? Why do they behave the way they do? If behavior issues get out of hand, how do you fix things? Get the answers and more when you listen to Cat Talk Radio with host Molly DeVos. We'll give you the straight facts, offer some tried and tested ideas, and alert you as to what's being done in this country and worldwide to save cats and shelter challenges. Cat Talk Radio, every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific, on Voice America Variety.
Join Chris Epting every week for The Moment. Chris talks to some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet, including authors, artists, and athletes. And that's just the A-list. These celebrities and public figures have interesting stories that all showcase the moments that their lives took a certain dramatic turn, changing them forever and shaping them to be the person that they were meant to be. Listen for The Moment with Chris Epting, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, on the Voice America Variety Channel.
This week on The Revolution with Jim and Trav, it's all about spring hunting pursuits, turkeys, bears, and more. Listen as our panel breaks down all the different spring hunting opportunities available across the country. Joining Jim and Trav is Nick Munn, co-host of Michael Waddell's Bone Collector, plus Nick Ventura and Tom Petrie from Become One. Jim and Trav's spring hunting pursuits discussion is presented by Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, World Fishing Network, and My Outdoor TV. Saturdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern on the Voice America Variety Channel.
Are you ready for a disaster? If you are like many people in the world, that answer may sadly be no. Disasters happen unexpectedly to people just like you every day. Tune into Preparing for the Unexpected with business continuity and disaster planning expert Alex Fullick. The show will not only help you better prepare for a disaster itself, but also to prepare you, your place of employment, and community for the aftermath, emotionally, financially, and with a better level of awareness and a stronger feeling of resiliency. Tune in Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Variety Channel. Sports continues to grow and evolve to ever-increasing prominence in today's society. On All Around Sports, host John Inglesby will connect with the leading newsmakers from the sports world, including players, owners, and fellow sports journalists, discussing the top news and events that are relevant to sports today. John will also report from and offer his experience of the world's top sports events. Tune into All Around Sports with John Inglesby, Mondays at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, on the Voice America Variety Channel.
If you hear a dog barking or an angel singing, then you know that you are listening to Waking Up in America. Heard every Wednesday at 3 Pacific Time, Valerie Kirkard and all of her friends will bring you powerful and humorous discussions that raise thoughts and give you insight on how to live your life to its fullest potential. Adventure is always a must on Waking Up in America with Valerie Kirkard every Wednesday at 3 Pacific.
Something's happening coming up on staging.
You're tuned into Finding Your Frequency with hosts Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. Connect with the show. Call in to 1-866-472-5788. That's 1-866-472-5788.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We're on with fantastic guest Reena Patel. She's been sharing, all kinds of great information about parenting, autism, and we're going to kind of shift gears just a little bit because I wanted to definitely bring up the fact that you were recently nominated for San Diego Magazine's Woman of the Year. That is amazing. Tell us about that.
Oh, thank you. I found out a few months ago and received information that had gotten nominated for Rising Star and Woman of the Year. And what that is someone who's just up and coming, who has just started to establish herself, and to be amongst some of the amazing nominees and women out there in our community, making a difference. And it was very humbling. I do what I do because I love it. And to know that other people, other organizations and other families see my work and see what a difference it's making for them or even just other individuals is very heartwarming. I'm very touched. It just makes, it just validates what I do.
So, hey, have you ever been to the California Women's Conference?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, we're going to fix that. We're going to have to get you in there. So we did this. We went last year. And so what we did when we were there, there's all kinds of female entrepreneurs and speakers and, all those types of things. And so it's like a whole day long event at the Long Beach Convention Center. And they bring in all of these fantastic speakers to talk about, all things women related. And so we broadcast the whole thing, all of the stage, all of the speakers on stage. We pulled audio from that and broadcast all of that out live and then did some video snippets. And then at the end, we gave away an entire radio show series for a year we had people that were women. They were, writing in as contestants, and they had to, write why they would be the best hosts for the show. What are they doing to, push female initiatives and help the community and all that. So then we gave this woman, Debbie Montgomery, who ended up winning the radio show. But yeah, I think that's something that I'd love to expose you to that, because this is is the same type of stuff like what you do with, the kids and what you're doing with all that and how you're helping to really change lives and educate people on the proper or different ways that they can go about parenting and all that. I think that, to get you involved with that community and would be fantastic. This is I think probably a very perfect fit. And we have a bunch of radio show hosts that are already on Voice America that are part of that. And so, yeah, I'd love to get you there. I'll find out the dates on that and we'll connect. But after that, and then let you know. But yeah, we should get you to the California Women's Conference.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I would love that opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a very, very cool interview. Tell the listening audience where they can find more information about you, Reena. Where do they get your books and all that good stuff?
Wonderful. Well, first stop, my website, www.reena, R-E-E-N-A-B, Patel, Patel.com. You can find my book information. All my books are on Amazon, and like I said, Barnes and Noble's online. And then you can also follow me on social media. My Instagram at Reena B. Patel, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well. And I look forward to meeting all of you. And I want to leave with one of my favorite quotes. In a world where you can be anything, I say be kind. And so please remember that.
Oh, those are fantastic words. Be kind. That's one thing that my mom always told me, that it doesn't cost you any money to be kind.
No.
It costs nothing,
And it goes a long way, right?
It sure does. It sure does. I was stopping at the gas station yesterday on my way home, and one of our audio engineers, his name is Aaron. He actively participates in what's called the Be Kind movement. And so, and also what's called Random Act of Kindness. And so I'm going to challenge you to hashtag Random Act of Kindness. Okay. Right. And so when you're out there in your everyday life, but you have to publicize it on social media. Right. So when you do that random act of kindness, an example. So Aaron was driving home yesterday. He's on the freeway. He notices that there's a car pulled over. They have a flat tire. The person's just standing there, right, not changing the tire. So he's like, oh, maybe they need help. He pulls over, and sure enough, the guy didn't know how to change a tire. He didn't have roadside assistance. He wasn't quite sure what to do. So Aaron's like, oh, well, pop your thing. I'll change your tire for you, and change the tire. And then they took a selfie together. And, that right there is what random act of kindness is. So yes. I want to challenge you, Reena, to a random act of kindness.
Yes, absolutely. Let's challenge everyone. I think that's
I agree.
Great.
Fantastic. You guys go check out Reena's website, reenabpatel.com. And of course, you can check out the books on Amazon. My Friend Max, a story about a friend with autism, and Winnie and Her Worries, which came out in 2018, also on Amazon. Reena, thank you so much for joining us on Finding Your Frequency today.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me.
All you guys out there listening, I don't know how you're listening, whether you're listening on Voice America, podcast, iTunes, all of those applications you have on your phone. But either way, make sure you subscribe. Give us a nice review, 5 stars. We love those ones. Keep up the good work. Spread the love. Random act of kindness. Don't forget that, guys. Go check out our website, findingyourfrequency.net. I'm on Twitter at Radio Ryan1. Jeff is at Jeff Spinney2. And we thank you guys so much for listening. Stay tuned for some more fantastic content from Finding a Frequency right here at voiceamerica.com.